Real quick before we roll this footage. A Republican congressman just walked into a hearing armed with what he claimed were bombshell receipts proving that Jack Smith's office violated the Constitution by secretly subpoenaing the phone records of Kevin McCarthy and 9 United States senators. He came in loud. He came in aggressive. He came in with printed emails and dramatic accusations. But here is the thing. When you actually slow down and look carefully at what was presented in that room versus what was being claimed about it, the story looks very, very different from the headline Gill was trying to write. Watch this.
Texas, Mr. Gill is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Smith, in January of 2023, did you subpoena then Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy's toll records?
Yes, sir, we did.
Yes, you did. And the subpoena covered the time period between November 2020 and January 2021. Is that right?
I'm sorry, sir. Could you say that again?
We're not going to delay like this. The subpoena covered the time period between November of 2020 and January 2021. How many days after Kevin McCarthy was sworn in as Speaker did you subpoena his records?
I don't recall, but those two things had nothing to do with one.
It was 16 days after becoming the highest ranking Republican in the House of Representatives. You subpoenaed his toll records. Do you agree that that might reasonably be considered a violation of the speech or debate clause?
I do not, and I want to be clear that the toll records...
You were collecting months' worth of phone data on the Republican Speaker of the House, the leader of the opposition, right after he got sworn in as Speaker, all around the time of a major vote. That sounds like a flagrant violation of the speech or debate clause to me, and I think most people agree with me. And Speaker McCarthy had no recourse, did he? Because you issued a nondisclosure order ensuring that neither he nor any of the American people knew about these subpoenas. Is that right?
The toll record, the non-content toll record subpoenas, we did secure non-disclosure orders for those subpoenas.
You did, and let me ask you, Mr. Smith, at the time you secured those non-disclosure orders, was Speaker McCarthy a flight risk?
The non-disclosure order was based on concerns about...
Was Speaker McCarthy a flight risk?
He was not.
He was not. Then why did your non-disclosure order refer to him as a flight risk? It says right here, the court finds reasonable grounds to believe that such disclosure will result in flight from prosecution.
Sir, when securing a non-disclosure order, the risks don't have to be associated.
You think that the Speaker of the House is a flight risk?
The question?
No, this is not your time. This is my time. You think the Speaker of the House is a flight risk? You think he's going to hop on a plane and leave the country?
No, what I was trying to explain is with respect to a non-disclosure order, the risks aren't necessarily associated with the subscriber to the phone. They're the risks to the investigation.
I think that you were using, this was clearly in reference to Speaker McCarthy, and you were using clearly false information to secure a non-disclosure order to hide from Speaker McCarthy and from the American people the fact that you were spying on his toll records. But I've got more, so let's move on. In May of 2023, you also issued subpoenas for toll records of 9 U.S. senators and an additional representative. Is that right?
In May of 23, we did issue...
You did, and there were non-disclosure orders in conjunction with those subpoenas as well, right?
That's correct, consistent with department policy and the law.
So again, nobody would know what you were doing. The senators would, and the representatives would, and the American people wouldn't know what you were doing. Is that right?
The toll records that we secured and the non-disclosure orders were consistent with policy and consistent...
And you knew whenever you were doing that there was a risk you were violating the speech or debate clause. Is that right?
The toll record subpoenas that we secured were with the concurrence of the public integrity.
Your own analysis says that you knew there was a risk you were violating the speech or debate clause. I have it right here. This is an email from John Keller at Public Integrity Section to your team. As you are aware, quote, as you are aware, there is some litigation risk regarding whether compelled disclosure of toll records of a member's legislative calls violates the speech or debate clause in the D.C. Circuit. That's from your own analysis right there. So you did know, didn't you?
Sir, with respect to the item you just put up on the screen, the last sentence states...
we're going to get to the last sentence.
Okay.
We're going to get to the last sentence. And You cite case law in here, quote, "The bar on compelled disclosure is absolute." Is that right, or do you think that you didn't have to abide by that precedent?
To be clear, this statement is not from my office. This is the statement of Public
This is
Integrity
your
Center.
justification for those subpoenas and NDOs that you ordered. This was part of your analysis. It's a cursory analysis. I think it's worth noting. But let's get to that last sentence then. Quote, "Given my understanding of the low likelihood that any of the members listed below would be charged, the litigation risk should be minimal here." In other words, you're using a novel legal theory, which you knew was novel, has never been tested by any court. You're not charging any of these members. Nobody's going to know about it because you issued NDOs. Nobody's going to sue about it, so who cares? We're going to do it anyways. I mean, you walked all over the Constitution throughout this entire process.
Mr. Chairman, the gentleman's time's
spying
expired.
on members of Congress, and you know it. It's absolutely disgraceful.
The time.
I yield back.
Welcome back to Winner's Breakdowns. I'm Winner, and if that clip left you with questions about what actually just happened in that room, then you are in exactly the right place, because I'm going to break down every single layer of that exchange carefully and honestly, and by the end of this video, you're going to understand not just what Gill was claiming, but why those claims fall apart the moment you examine them seriously. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now, smash that like button, drop a comment telling me what you thought the moment that clip ended, because I read every single one and I want to hear where you stand on this. Look into all of it, because what you just watched was not a devastating exposure of prosecutorial misconduct. What you just watched was a carefully choreographed political performance designed to look like a constitutional reckoning while actually amounting to very little when you examine the substance behind the theatrics. Congressman Gill walked into that room with printed documents and a dramatic delivery and an obvious goal: to paint Jack Smith as a rogue prosecutor who trampled the Constitution in pursuit of political opponents. And if you watch that clip without knowing the legal and procedural context behind what was being described, it probably sounded pretty alarming. That was the point. But context matters enormously here, and the context is almost entirely missing from the way Gill framed every single question he asked. Let's start with the foundational accusation that subpoenaing Kevin McCarthy's phone toll records 16 days after he became Speaker of the House was a violation of the speech or debate clause of the Constitution. This is the centerpiece of Gill's entire argument, and it sounds serious until you understand what the speech or debate clause actually protects and what toll records actually are. The speech or debate clause protects members of Congress from being questioned about their legislative acts. It is designed to ensure that the executive branch cannot use its investigative powers to harass or intimidate members of Congress for the positions they take, the votes they cast, or the legislative work they perform. It is an important and meaningful constitutional protection, and nobody serious is arguing otherwise. But here's what Gill either does not understand or is deliberately choosing to obscure. Phone toll records are not legislative records. Toll records show which numbers were called and when calls were made. They do not reveal the content of conversations. They do not capture legislative deliberations. They do not expose the substance of any legislative act. They are the most basic and minimal form of communication data that investigators routinely subpoena in the course of criminal investigations, and courts have consistently recognized that the speech or debate clause does not provide an absolute shield against every form of investigative inquiry into a member of Congress, particularly when that inquiry is into conduct that goes beyond legitimate legislative activity. And this is the critical point that Gill kept dancing around without ever addressing directly. The January 6th investigation was not an investigation into Kevin McCarthy's legislative acts. It was an investigation into a criminal conspiracy to obstruct the certification of a presidential election. Whatever communications McCarthy had during the period covered by that subpoena were not protected legislative deliberations. They were potentially relevant evidence in a criminal investigation into one of the most serious attacks on American democratic processes in the history of this country. The fact that McCarthy happened to be a member of Congress does not automatically wrap every phone call he made during that period in constitutional protection. Now let's talk about the nondisclosure orders, because this is the part of Gill's presentation that is designed to sound the most sinister, and I want to address it directly, and honestly. Non-disclosure orders in conjunction with investigative subpoenas are not unusual. They are not secret weapons invented by Jack Smith to hide his misconduct from the American people. They are a standard and legally recognized tool used in criminal investigations across the country every single day by prosecutors at every level of government. The purpose of a non-disclosure order is straightforward. It is to prevent a subject or witness from being alerted to an investigation before investigators have had the opportunity to gather the evidence they need. When you tip off a subject that you are examining their records, you risk evidence being destroyed, witnesses being tampered with, and investigations being compromised before they can be completed. The idea that securing a non-disclosure order in conjunction with a subpoena is evidence of wrongdoing is frankly a reversal of how these tools actually work in the real world of criminal investigation. Gill tried to make it sound like Smith was hiding something nefarious by ensuring McCarthy did not know his records were being examined. But think about it from the other direction. If you're conducting a criminal investigation into events surrounding January 6th, and you need to examine the communications of people who were in contact with those at the center of that conspiracy, alerting those people in advance would potentially destroy the entire investigation. The non-disclosure orders were not evidence of misconduct. They were evidence of professional and responsible investigative practice. And the flight risk language in the non-disclosure order that Gill made such a dramatic production out of is another example of taking standard legal boilerplate completely out of context and presenting it as something scandalous. Smith explained this directly in that hearing, and I want to make sure it registers clearly. In the context of a non-disclosure order, the flight risk language refers to risks to the investigation, not to the specific subscriber whose records are being subpoenaed. This is standard language that appears in non-disclosure order applications precisely because courts require investigators to articulate the risks that disclosure would create for the investigation. It is not a characterization of the individual whose records are being sought. It is a legal articulation of why premature disclosure would harm the investigative process. Gill knew this, or should have known this. The fact that he stood there and demanded that Smith confirm whether he thought the Speaker of the House was going to hop on a plane and leave the country was not a serious legal argument. It was a soundbite. Now I want to address the internal email from the DOJ Public Integrity section, because this is the document Gill presented as his smoking gun, and I think it is worth reading carefully rather than just accepting Gill's characterization of what it says. The email acknowledged litigation risk around whether toll record subpoenas involving members of Congress could be challenged under the speech or debate clause. That is not a smoking gun. That is a lawyer doing their job. Any competent prosecutor's office examines the legal risks associated with investigative steps before taking them. The existence of a memo that says here are the potential legal challenges to this approach, and here is our analysis of those challenges, is not evidence of wrongdoing. It is evidence of exactly the kind of careful, deliberate legal analysis that you want prosecutors to be doing before they take significant investigative steps. In Gill's characterization of the final line of that email, his claim that it amounted to nobody is going to sue, so who cares, we will do it anyway, is a profound misrepresentation of what that kind of legal risk analysis actually means in practice. Legal risk assessments in a prosecutor's office weigh the likelihood of legal challenge against the legal merits of the position being taken. Concluding that the litigation risk is minimal is not the same as concluding that the action is legally questionable. It is a judgment that the legal position is sound and that the probability of a successful challenge is low. Prosecutors make these kinds of risk assessments every single day in every jurisdiction in this country. Presenting a routine legal risk memo as evidence of a decision to willfully violate the Constitution is not an honest reading of that document. The effort to retroactively paint that investigation as a politically motivated constitutional overreach is not about the law. It is not about the speech or debate clause. It is not about non-disclosure orders or toll records or internal DOJ emails. It is about the ongoing political project of delegitimizing the accountability mechanisms that were used to hold powerful people responsible for what happened on January 6th, 2021. If you can make Jack Smith look like a rogue prosecutor who trampled the Constitution, then you can make the entire investigation look like a political hit job, and you can make the accountability itself look like the real injustice. That is the goal. That is what Gill was doing in that hearing room, and it deserves to be named clearly. Jack Smith did his job. He did it carefully, professionally, and within the established legal and constitutional framework. The questions Gill raised sound alarming in a 5-minute hearing clip, but they do not hold up under honest scrutiny. And the American people deserve honest scrutiny rather than political theater dressed up as constitutional reckoning. So drop a comment and tell me where you land on this one. Do you think Gill's accusations hold up when you examine the legal context behind them, or do you think this was political theater designed to rehabilitate people who deserved the scrutiny they got? Do you think the speech or debate clause arguments are genuine constitutional concerns or strategic legal objections designed to derail accountability? I want to hear all of it, because this is exactly the kind of honest, complicated conversation Winners Breakdowns was built for. If you believe that accountability matters, that the rule of law applies to everyone, including the most powerful political figures in the country, and that political theater should not be allowed to pass itself off as constitutional scholarship, then you know exactly what to do right now. Hit that subscribe button, smash that like, and share this video with somebody who watched that clip and walked away thinking Gill had just blown the whole thing wide open. This has been Winners Breakdowns. Stay informed, stay sharp, stay committed to honest reckoning with what actually happened on January 6th and why it matters. And I will catch you in the next one.